Hey everybody, we are hard at work on the next feature video, but I thought we'd take a break and answer some of those questions that have been coming through the YouTube comments, the Facebook page, and email. We appreciate all of the comments, and I've got them here on a laptop, and I thought we could go through them informally and give you some answers to your questions. So the first one I have here is, I would like to know what are your toys, playsets that you really want in your collection. This reader wants to know what toys or playsets we don't have in our collection that we would really like to have. I gave this a little bit of thought. One of the big playsets that I don't have is the G.I. Joe Terrordrome. It was Cobra's, signature base, and it played a big role in the Larry Hama comics. I'd really like to have that, but it's very hard to come by intact, so that it might be a while before I get that one. And then if I was shooting the moon, I'd say the very rare Matchbox Robotech SDF-1 playset, which simulates the bridge of Super Dimensional Fortress Macross. That would be a real cool addition to our collection here. I don't have that. I also wouldn't mind having a Star Wars vintage sandcrawler. So if anyone's got one of those collecting dust and their wife wants them to throw it away, it has a home, send it my way. I will pay you for it. Do you have a podcast? Yes and no. We have a very good friend named Mike Alonzo who runs an excellent podcast on Blog Talk Radio called Clobberin' Time, and we are a regularly scheduled guest on Clobberin' Time the first Tuesday of every month. His podcast is every Tuesday and Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. If you had an item that was mint in sealed box or mint on card, and it's pretty rare, would you open it or keep it sealed? This is kind of a dicey question because, yes, in 99% of circumstances, I would keep the item sealed because we don't believe in ripping open vintage toys that have survived the decades intact. There are other instances, though, where I have opened a vintage toy. But before you freak and think that I'm, burning down the rainforest, let me explain. We were putting together Tonto and the Lone Ranger from the Gabriel Legend of the Lone Ranger series. Loose examples of these can be found all over the place, the figures. But the weapons loose is another story altogether. But here's the interesting part. The figures were not popular at the time because the movie was not popular. So Tonto especially was a peg warmer in toy stores for years. And he went on clearance all over the place and they still couldn't get rid of him. So he was in overstock and everything else. So carded examples of Tonto are more common than complete loose examples. The cards were faded. The cards were beaten up. I think they were mouse chewed. They were so sun-baked that the bubbles on them had turned mustard yellow, and the scotch tape inside holding the weapons to the sides of the bubble had liquefied. The action figures were so faded inside that they looked like zombies. They were completely faded. So in that instance, I needed the weapons to complete the figures, and I felt like perfectly good weapons on sun-baked, creased up, busted up, broken cards with sun-faded figures did nobody any good. So yes, in that instance, I did remove a mint item from the card. That promise to collect complete items and only show you complete items was actually at the forefront of why RetroBlasting started, which is our next question. Why did you start this web channel? We started it because we were looking around online. Melinda and I were looking on YouTube at videos of vintage toys. And I was directed to a channel that I was told was the be-all and end-all of vintage toy reviews. And I don't want to name names, so I'm not going to. But we went on this channel and we were watching a video about Voltron, the Panache Place Voltron, which we've talked about before. And the toy comes up and easily 35% of it is missing. The lids on the lions are missing. The pilots who are there have no helmets. Some of them are sun faded and scratched up. It was just terrible. And so what ended up happening was the host was telling you more about the toy than he could show you, which I think is a useless way to do a video because a video is visual. You want to be able to show somebody what you're talking about, not have to tell them while you show them a part of it. So I went and looked at some of his other videos about vintage toys, and they were equally incomplete. And Melinda pointed out that I had a lot of those toys already in our display cases in our house, and they were complete. Most of them were from my childhood. And we said, well, let's start a video channel and do this the right way. Do you collect comics? Which ones? I used to collect comics. I was a comic book collector starting with G.I. Joe when I was, I guess, 10 or 11 years old. And then when I got into college, I started collecting Superman really hardcore. And so now the comic books that I collect are generally graphic novels. I'll collect collected volumes of works. I recently finished off collecting all of the IDW reprints of G.I. Joe, but I don't collect a lot of new books. Will you ever do videos about retro music? Yes. Yes, we will. Melinda and I are big retro music fans. Melinda is a metal chick, as you've heard her say many times, and I'm kind of like an 80s guy that you probably catch listening to Huey Lewis. It was funny, Melinda took me to a Slayer concert last year, and she's decked out in the the combat boots with the black t-shirt on, and she's looking very in the crowd. And I'm following her with a still camera, taking photos for her, and I'm in red swoosh Nikes with a short sleeve button down shirt, looking very, I don't know, Huey Lewis. And so yes, we're going to be talking about retro music. We're working on some content for that. Are you going to do any more He-Man videos? Yes, we're working on 2 He-Man videos right now. We're working on a tour of Snake Mountain, and we're also working on a larger piece, sort of a multi-parter that will discuss the He-Man series overall. Do you collect any new stuff? That depends. New stuff for us is not the focus of our channel. It has to be something where we can use it as a counterpoint. I've walked into rooms that are just packed to the gills, all 4 walls, just very well organized, and the impact is just bam. But it's all new stuff, like it's all new Star Wars, or it's all new G.I. Joe, or new Transformers. And you walk in and you go, whoa. Like, in the sense that the volume is hitting you. But when you ever walk into a place that's filled like a comic book shop or a toy shop that sells the rare stuff, or like an antique store that has a toy section, and you run across those old boxes, or you run across those old toys that you remember from when you were little, and it's in mass, that's a different kind of reaction. That reaction is you walk in and you're like, whoa, wow, whoa. And then the nostalgia, just kind of just washes over you. It's a completely different feeling, and that's the feeling that I'm after when I collect. Melinda's kind of the same way. We really like that feeling, and we like that kind of impact. And it's not the kind of impact that you can get when you walk into a room that's filled with modern toys, even if they're modern depictions of retro things. So like I said, you walk into a room that's filled with new Star Wars stuff, it's impressive in its volume, but it will not take you there. Like it's hard to explain. Can you demo the Bullwhip for us? There was a previous video I did where I talked about the Raiders of the Lost Ark Bullwhips that are in our props collection, props and costumes. Yes, I can demo the Bullwhip for you. And yes, I plan to in a video that I'm going to dedicate to the Indiana Jones toy line and the Indiana Jones series. So that will be coming up. What other video channels do you like to watch? I like to watch RF Biker Scout has a great video channel about focused Star Wars stuff. I really like that channel. One of the channels that I've always been watching on YouTube about toy reviews is Rocket Punch Army, formerly known as Chachi Power. I think they both are still in existence, and he runs both of them. But what I like about Rocket Punch Army, and by extension Chachi Power, is that he's articulate in the way he describes what he's talking about, and he puts it in context. That was something that I really admired and still admire about his channel, because a lot of times you'll just get this focus on the item itself, and whether it's well articulated or whatever, but you don't get a lot of insight into the context of the item, and that's something that I really like. Something where there's some historical knowledge that's given, or just some personal knowledge that's put into it. And Rocket Punch Army does that really well. I also really like Angry Video Game Nerd. That's a great channel. Highly recommended if you like video games. Last question. What is the most expensive item in your collection? Melinda and I had a conversation about this. I guess it depends on what you're referring to. If you're referring to toys, then the most expensive item in our collection is the original Popey DX Chogokin Beast King Go Lion. The original Voltron, which we recently did a video of. If you're just talking about an object in our collection that's not necessarily a toy, then there's a few different ways you can look at that. If it was a prop or a costume, then the most expensive item in my collection would be my Ghostbusters Proton Pack, which I've done a video about. And if it's just anything in general, then it would be my DeLorean sports car. The DeLorean has the dubious distinction of also being the biggest money drain on the RetroBlasting archive, because it's a very finicky car, and it's always breaking something on itself. Something's always wearing out, and you gotta get a new part and put that in there. So there's going to be a larger video later. A lot of the questions that I get asked about that car, what's it like to own that car? I feel like, much like with the Bullwhip question, that deserves a dedicated video. So in the near future, you're going to see 2 He-Man videos. You're going to see a video about Indiana Jones, and you're going to see a video about DeLorean ownership. So stay tuned for those. I hope I haven't bored you to death. I hope this has been interesting, and we will see you on the next video.